Hi, this is Phil Kaveny, science fiction credit editor-writer. I'm here to tell you a little bit about the genre of alternative history in literature, cinema, and other media. To introduce you to the concept of alternative history, I'm going to do a little thought experiment to extrapolate how you might experience your first contact with alternative history, always bearing in mind what the greatest media theorist of the 20th century, Marshall McLuhan, said about the medium being the message. Here's how someone unfamiliar with science fiction might engage Man in the High Castle as an access point from the TV series into the book, which was published in 1962. You flip on the Kindle and the screen lights up and you see an icon for the TV series called The Man in the High Castle, followed by a flyover map of what you thought was America, divided between the Japanese on the Pacific coast, the neutral, and the Nazi zone of occupation. Then there is this eerie, haunting female voice with a Japanese accent singing the German song Edelweiss. And then as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz said to her little dog Toto, you know you're not in Kansas anymore. Instead, you're in the world of alternative history, grounded by a book written by Philip K. Dick, published in 1962, called The Man in the High Castle, in which America loses World War II to the Japanese and German. America is divided into 3 zones of occupation in the same way that Germany was divided after the Second World War. This is all done in 74 seconds, and one of the icons that persists in my mind is the image of the Statue of Liberty with a blood-red tear running from her eyes. If you're unfamiliar with the great historical events of the 20th century, you're not alone. Nevertheless, the scene opens into a TV series, which leads into the book. It has the effect of pulling you in. It has the effect of making you care. You are an American, and you're seeing Americans as being under the boot of the oppressor. The Nazis are the Nazis, and you sort of know about the bad Nazis, and you know some of the things that the Japanese have done, and you know this is being done to America. But this is a different kind of a series, because this isn't a narrative of resistance. This is a narrative of survival. This is a narrative of getting around the brutal oppressor and gradually surviving in the worst of circumstances. And I think that's the terrible thing, because we feel for the characters, and we feel what we would like. We might be like there. This is not like a run and shoot video game. And I'll be doing more work on it, maybe even giving a bibliography and talking about some of my all-time favorites. The thing is that Philip K. Dick created a genre of respectable science fiction. Up until Man in the High Castle was published 57 years ago, the only way you could get science fiction was in the cheapest magazines, and his probably was the first mainstream hardcover science fiction book, and I believe it was an American Book Club selection. Earlier in my talk, I used the term genre to describe alternative history. And the thing that makes a genre is a group of books having some essential feature in common. And we speak of alternative history because it usually takes a real historical experience and makes a particular event diverge, which starts a chain of other events, which in turn give you an alternative reality. Now I'm going to get very technical and talk about a particular period in American history where Franklin Delano Roosevelt was almost assassinated. It happened in Miami, I believe, in 1933, and he was sitting next to Mayor Cermak of Chicago. And an assassin's bullet missed Roosevelt, and Cermak took it himself, spent 4 months dying in terrible pain, and Roosevelt went on to be president. But the thing is that at that particular time in American history, there was a tremendous resistance in any European involvement because American soldiers had died in the First World War, and we had been warned by Jefferson and Washington and just about everybody to avoid foreign entanglements. But a political party called the Isolationists, which were part of the Republican Party, developed. And they developed with the idea that it was not America's job to do anything in the world, and that we should hide behind our borders, and we should build very high walls both against immigration and tariffs. Does this sound like any American president we know of now? Well, I probably shouldn't put that on the tape, but it's true. So the idea was that without Roosevelt being alive, no one had the force to pull together the political will that it took for America to become eventually involved in Europe. I've been doing some very interesting research on this, about the attack on Pearl Harbor. And basically, one of the reasons that this happened was Roosevelt decided that the Japanese, in their invasion of mainland China, had killed enough innocent people. So as a result, Roosevelt cut off their oil supply, their scrap metal supply, and if the sanctions would have kept in place, Japan would have lost their ability to make war. And that basically led to the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. But with no Roosevelt as president, you got America that's open for business, nobody blocking the Japanese, and a chance for them to build up a very powerful military machine. All right, well, I snuck a little bit of a history lecture in there, but it was only barely that America won the Second World War against two exceedingly powerful imperial forces. And so that if you're a historian or history buff, you might like it for that reason. I would like it for that reason. But if you like a good story, you get back to telling it in a literary way that you care and you worry about the characters. There's a very powerful female character who's on the edge of death, looking for the man in the high castle. And the man in the high castle represents something almost like the Indian ghost dance, in the sense that there's a memory of another America in which the Nazis and the Japanese have been crushed. And the Nazis that are in this reality fear nothing more than cutting across time and interacting with what's going on in the America that didn't lose. I want to thank you all for watching, and we'll do another program on alternative history. Thank you all.